What's up everybody, my name is Gary Lawrence and today we're going over what I think is the most underrated video camera out there. And no, it's none of these. It's actually this guy right here. So it's not actually this camera that I'm talking about, it's this type of camera. Sorry to start everything off with a lie. This is a 360 camera, and just check out what it can do. This is my personal one. It's the Ricoh Theta V or Ricoh Theta 5. I don't know which one to call it. And I bought this in about 2008. 2008. I bought it in 2000. I time traveled. Imagine if I had this technology in 2008. I bought this camera in 2018 and I didn't really have a use for it then. I just knew it was a cool new technology that I wanted to try out and see what I could do with it, experiment with it. So right off the bat, I'm gonna say that you're probably not gonna shoot your entire documentary or film on a 360 camera. But having said that, I think this is one of the most underutilized tools by filmmakers for a whole bunch of reasons. The types of images you can get out of this camera, you can't get out of any other camera. Let me explain. So for those of you who don't know, a 360 camera is a camera that has lenses on both sides of the camera and they're 180 degrees on both sides. So if you stitch that together, you've got a 360 degree video where you can look wherever you want and you don't have to decide when you're shooting. You can throw it into post-production in your editor and figure out where you want to look after the fact. So for me as a documentary filmmaker, that's a huge deal. I am usually the only one on my set and I tend to shoot a good amount of action shots. And when you do those type of shots, it's awesome to have another person or a couple of people with a couple of cameras to help you get different angles while the action is happening. With this camera, I can kind of mount it and set it and forget it, and it will be that extra person. It will record that extra angle that I need. And that's what these types of cameras let me do. So on my last documentary, Backyard Pilots is what it's called, and this is actually episode 4. This is kind of like a hybrid behind the scenes / standalone YouTube video that I'm doing. But if you haven't seen my trailer for Backyard Pilots, my short documentary, stop this video, go watch it, it's on my channel, and then come back to this because there's a few shots in the trailer that I specifically used this camera for. For the majority of this documentary, I used GoPro, regular just GoPro action cameras with, one lens on the front and you can change the field of view. I used those and strapped them to the plane in different areas to get different shots. But the problem with that is once I mount it to the plane and they take off, I have to let them fly around for a little bit, get the shots I need. Then they're gonna have to land. I have to take the mount off. I have to figure out a new place to mount it, and then they have to take off and go fly around and come around and land. And who knows if the action is actually going to happen where I mounted or positioned the camera. With 360 cameras, this kind of alleviates a lot of that concern. Basically, if I mount it in a place that has an unobstructed view, I can be sure that if anything happens, it's going to get captured by this camera because the cameras capture everything. The other reason I wanted to use 360 cameras was to achieve a specific. The other reason I wanted to use 360 cameras was to achieve a specific shot. And that shot is this kind of impossible angle of my dad's plane. So if you look at it, it looks like the camera's not mounted to anything really. It's out in front of, it's almost by the propeller, out in front of the propeller, off to the right-hand side, off the wing strut. And so because when 360 cameras stitch the image together, whatever's directly above it or below it can almost be hidden because there is just a little bit of stitching it has to do to connect both video feeds from the right lens to the left lens. So you can hide mounting hardware if you're good at it. And you can tell with this documentary, it worked, it just didn't work the best. What we ended up doing was my dad found a piece of metal pole, and the camera that we were using, the 360 camera we were actually mounting, were ones that I rented, and they are the GoPro version. They're called the GoPro Max, I believe. So we ended up getting a pole and welding a few washers to the end of it so that I could stick the GoPro mounting hardware through it and make sure it was securely mounted to the plane. In retrospect, we actually cut this pole a little bit shorter because I didn't want it to be too long. I thought it might be a little bouncy, but it was super rigid and I had no issues with it, knowing that after the fact, after we shot it. So I wish we kept an extra foot to 2 feet of extra length on it, because the further away you get the camera, the less distorted things can look. And that's one thing that you will learn if you ever shoot with one of these. You really need to get it away from your body and away from your hand. So ideally what you want to use is basically like a selfie pole. And let me see if I have one. Mine's around here somewhere. Let's see if I can find it. So this is what I'm talking about right here. This one's a selfie stick called Smattree. Smattree, it's like a Boston base. It's actually a Chinese knockoff, but Smattree. It's a selfie stick that you can twist to loosen and then kind of make it longer. And it's also got a little mounting point right here. You can change the angle. And then it also comes with this little piece right here. And this is great because if you ever want to set this down, you've got the legs. So you can just kind of plop it right down like so. And there you go. You got your camera right here all nice and mounted. And like I said, with this one specifically, you don't see anything underneath the camera because everything's so nice and compact. If I was to take an image like this now I'm good. My hand's far enough away, it's not gonna make me look all super distorted. I will throw the link in the description for this one. I think I bought it off Amazon for like 12 bucks or something. All right, so back to how we achieved this shot. So we mounted the pole on the plane. I stuck the camera out as far as it would go, and this was the result. So once you mount it and they go flying, basically you just sit around and wait. I had a radio in here with me so I could hear them talking back and forth about what they were doing and I could communicate with them. But basically you want to stay out of the way so you're not in the shot. Once you go and retrieve the footage, now it's time to get it into your editor of choice. And here's where the process can get a bit cumbersome. All right, so once you get the files from the SD card or the camera to your computer, you then have to do one more step before you can edit it inside of your editing software. And that step is converting it from dual fisheye, this image that you see now on my screen, to equirectangular, I think is the term. Basically a flat 360 video. And this can take some time to convert depending on the specs of your computer and how powerful it is. Once that conversion is complete, you bring over your files into the editor of choice. In my case, I'm using Premiere Pro. And with Premiere Pro, it's as simple as dropping a plugin on top of your video. So again, get your video into your editing software. You can drag it to the timeline and let it drop. And here you can see the equirectangular flat 360 footage. Then what you want to do is go over to your effects panel and find the VR GoPro plugin. This one's called Gopro Vr Reframe. And what'll happen here is you'll get all these parameters that pop up. And you can see by using the different sliders, you can see what each one does. This one I'm playing with right now is the field of view. It shows how zoomed in or zoomed out you want to be. Then what you have next is yaw. And you can see that's kind of the pan motion, your left to right. Next you've got pitch. You can see what that does. And then you have roll. And you can see what that does as well. Smooth transition just makes the abruptness basically from one keyframe to another. It smooths that out. Then what you can do is if you turn the keyframes on to make keyframes in your little timeline here, we can kind of give you an example of how this works. So say I kind of want to spin around to reveal what is in front of me. It's easy enough as grabbing this yaw slider and then panning it around to look out the window. Now if I drag it back to the start and I go ahead and hit play, you can see how that works. So there's an infinite amount of possibilities that you can do with this, and that's why it's so cool. It's not often that a camera or technology comes along in the industry that can totally change the way you shoot something, but 360 cameras have totally done that. So I know it's not a use for everything. You're not going to shoot an entire film with this camera, but for the specific shots that you need, it is a really good tool, and I don't see a lot of people using it. So that's why for me, it's one of the most underrated video cameras out there. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing, and I will catch you all on the next one. Peace.